Hey, folks, we're still at RxJS Live, and I'm talking to Hanna Howard. Hanna, do you just want to introduce yourself real quick, let people know who you are, and then we can talk a little bit about your talk and about RxJS?
Yeah. So, I'm just a developer person, but I work on sort of all parts of the stack for our consulting company. In particular, I'm really enthusiastic about RxJS, particularly in the use of front-end application development, and have been so enthusiastic that I've started writing a bunch of tools to integrate Rx with React and to also model some architectural patterns in Rx. So, yeah.
Infinite Red is a US-based consultancy specializing in React and React Native. They do mobile app and web design and development. They are deeply involved in the React and React Native open source communities, publish the React Native newsletter with 10,000 subscribers, and are involved with the React Native core development. If you have a project and need design or engineering help from an experienced team to take it all the way from concept to completion, get in touch with Infinite Red. You can find them at infinite.red. Make sure to mention you heard about them in this ad.
Great. So what do you said you work for a consultancy. So what do you folks do there, and how does that all work?
So I work for a company called Carbon 5. We're a product development agency. We work with basically everyone, from like small like MVP type startups to like I've worked on helping the Gap with their inventory systems. So like and we basically we're both like design, product, and development. More development's kind of our biggest discipline, but we help people make products, whatever it is that they need, and we work in kind of like everything. So yeah.
Gotcha. So you gave a talk this morning, and I missed it because I was out here getting checked in and everything. Do you want to just give a brief, elevator pitch for your talk, what you talked about and things like that?
Yeah. So my talk was focused on how to actually architect like full-scale applications using RxJS, particularly in the case of front-end applications. We at Carbon 5, we really, really like RxJS, and we like actually all the Rx libraries, and we've actually used it on quite a bit of production code to kind of like provide essentially a way to model state on the front end, essentially as a replacement for the role that like Redux would play in a React application. We've also done a lot of Rx stuff with Swift as well. So it's like, what the patterns actually emerge are cross language. So that's kind of cool.
When I'm building a new product, G2I is the company that I call on to help me find a developer who can build the first version. G2I is a hiring platform run by engineers that matches you with React, React Native, GraphQL, and mobile engineers who you can trust. Whether you are a new company building your first product or an established company that wants additional engineering help, G2I has the talent you need to accomplish your goals. Go to devchat.tv/G2I to learn more about what G2I has to offer. In my experience, G2I is linked up with experienced developers that can fit my budget, and the G2I staff are friendly and easy to work with. They know how product development works and can help you find the perfect engineer for your stack. Go to devchat.tv/G2I to learn more about G2I.
Nice. That makes sense. And our iOS show, iFreaks, they've talked a lot about Rx Swift and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting how it's spreading. And it's also interesting to see how it's spread in arenas like functional programming. So you get reactive programming and functional programming and how that all plays. And that's really, really interesting. In fact, you and I met briefly at CodeBeam in San Francisco. I was there as kind of a media partner, went to the speaker dinner. I think we chatted there for a few minutes and then at the conference. But yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, in your experience, how do these ideas come together? The functional programming, because it sounds like you do a lot of Erlang.
Sure.
And, and then you've also got, the reactive programming with RxJS, and there's some reactive programming ideas in Erlang and Elixir. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, functional programming's like most like simple form is that you write your program with ideally mostly pure functions that, don't mutate data in the function. Like they take inputs and they produce outputs, so that immutable property is kind of the kernel. But from that, there's what emerges is that there's a whole bunch of patterns that you end up using to use pure functions, but still get all the properties you're going to need in a sort of like side effectful environment, which is pretty much all environments. And in fact, like, it's really interesting because a lot of the like concepts, part of my talk was like this sort of like skating over of a bunch of Haskell concepts, not without mentioning the word Haskell, because like what functional programming, particularly the stuff that gets close to like algebra, is very, or like the abstract algebra stuff I've found that people are very like intimidated by it.
Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood, and I just launched my book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. It's up on Amazon. We self-published it. I would love your support. If you want to go check it out, you can find it there, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. Have a good one. Max out.
But there's a concept that ties a lot of these things together, which is like you have your pure functions and then you have something you wrap them in, right? And like there's these different types of wrappers. And once you start thinking about the wrappers, I call them contexts in my talk. They're kind of like everywhere. Like, like you have like an array was really just a wrapper around a value that's a collection, right? And a promise is a wrapper around a value that's asynchronous, and an observable is a wrapper around a value that'll change over time. And like once you start seeing that, it's like kind of hard to unsee it. And that's something that I talk a lot about as a base for thinking about building applications in RxJS. And then the sort of add-on to that is then how all those different little observables tie together. And it's not so much like a specific prescription as something that we've noticed has emerged over time in building these applications, which is that like your observables start to look like a graph. We call it the signal graph because you essentially have like each node is an observable that's emitting these signals, right? And then other nodes are getting signals from the base observables, and then they're computing new kinds of state. And you just have to kind of like, the challenge is always getting like all the little Rx operators right so that you get the properties you're going to want, particularly if you're dealing with state. But yeah, it's kind of a cool model, and it's a visual way of thinking about it that we actually work with quite a bit. So
very cool. Well, I'm going to encourage people to go look at your talk from RxJS Live. I'm assuming too that your talks from like CodeBeam and some of the other places that you've spoken at are also out there, so people can go check that.
Yeah, they are for sure.
So if people want to reach out to you and ask questions or see what you're working on or things like that, is there kind of a place where they can go to find that information?
Yeah. So you can for sure find me on the Twitters. My handle is at Tech Girl Wonder. And then the work that I'm doing with RxJS is all lives in the GitHub organization Rx React, which I was able to get, even though I don't have the NPM package Rx React. All my stuff is under a namespace Rx React. So I'm still working on it. There's a library called Signal to model the signal graph. And I'm working, and I was really, really, really trying to get out a new version of that would be super duper awesome. But, not quite for this time. So, yeah.
Good deal. Well, thanks, Hanna. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.